In 1945, Marilyn Maxwell walked into Frank Sinatra's annual Christmas gala, but then Sinatra's wife took one look at Maxwell's wrist and threw her out. Marvel Marilyn Maxwell enjoyed a stellar run as a classic Hollywood actress, but her life behind the scenes was much more shocking, dramatic, and downright provocative than any film or TV show she ever starred in. In her teens, Maxwell started working at a theatre. She couldn't get on the stage just yet, but she definitely found herself stage adjacent in her role as an usher. It was a reasonable start for a teenager interested in working in entertainment, but as it turns out, she would never settle on just being reasonable. Before she completed her sophomore year at high school, Maxwell got connected to a band and decided to drop out to be one of their singers. She made her nationwide debut while still in her teens. She got a gig singing on the radio and quickly turned it into a successful career. This might be a solid job for any other teenager, but if her next move is any evidence of her feelings, being a songbird didn't satisfy her. Perhaps by a stroke of good luck, an MGM executive discovered and decided to sign Maxwell to an acting contract in 1942, and told her to drop the name Marvel and use her middle name instead. Boring. She debuted in her first film that very same year with a role in the movie Stand By for Action. The film itself didn't do too well. In fact, critics complained the film was more about Hollywood's war than the very real World War II that continued to rage at the time. Maxwell, however, escaped the criticism unscathed. During the early 1950s, Maxwell received the opportunity to devote some time entertaining the troops abroad. While she was on tour, she missed the death of both her parents. This double tragedy likely cut her to her core, but she didn't show it. Instead, she focused on grabbing every opportunity that came her way. Film opportunities started rolling in. While her roles weren't the largest or most star-studded, Maxwell appeared often, making her name playing gorgeous women in films like Dr. Gillespie's Criminal Case and 3 Men in White. Just a few years into her acting career, however, one film gave her far more than she bargained for. While playing a seductive cafe singer in Lost in a Harem, Maxwell briefly worked with actor John Conte. It seems something undeniable sparked between her and the young stage actor. Their chemistry turned out to be so undeniable, in fact, that they made a life-changing decision. After only months of courting, the two married in September 1944. Most married couples likely experience at least a few honeymoon years once they wed, but for this couple, the honeymoon came crashing to an end quickly. There's been speculation about why, but the truth soon became undeniable. Just 2 years into their union, Maxwell and Conte ended their marriage in divorce. They'd had no children together and appeared to make a clean break after the marriage was dissolved. Interestingly enough, while Maxwell failed at romance and love, she continued to find success on screen. She appeared in several more films, earning her spot as a classic Hollywood film beauty. She acted and sang, receiving especially high praise for her role in the musical Summer Holiday in 1948. With her career overlapping with that of the unforgettable Marilyn Monroe, people often compared the two, and even brought Monroe up to Maxwell in interviews. And while Maxwell's career didn't disappoint, it also couldn't compare to Monroe's. In one notable interview comparing the two, Maxwell quipped, "I'm the blonde with her clothes on." This sounded like quite the dig at Monroe, known for her sensual roles and fashions. Try as she might though, Marilyn Maxwell couldn't escape the comparisons. In 1953, Maxwell appeared on an episode of What's My Line as their mystery guest. Take one guess at who the blindfolded panelists thought she was.
Are you by any chance Marilyn Monroe?
Nope.
All that being said, being compared to Marilyn Monroe isn't the worst thing in the world. and considering their respective luck with men, perhaps they had more in common than she thought. In 1950, Maxwell made another shocking move. She married a restaurant owner named Anders McIntyre. Considering the lack of details about their dating history, it's hard not to believe she rushed right into another marriage. Even worse, she went into this marriage with a little extra baggage. From almost the beginning of her new marriage, there was another man in Maxwell's picture. She'd worked with entertainer Bob Hope back in the 1940s during her stint entertaining troops. In fact, Maxwell served as an essential part of the act, notably wearing a very fitted sweater to sing "I Want to Love You." When the two met again in 1950, those memories apparently came rushing back. Despite both of them being on their second spouse at the time, Maxwell and Hope began an affair. What seemed to make it even more obnoxious, though, was the way they went about it. Not only did Maxwell and Hope work together on screen, but they also carried on their extramarital affair quite openly within Hollywood circles. They dated so openly, Maxwell earned herself a scathing nickname, Mrs. Bob Hope. Maxwell and her second husband divorced after only a year of marriage. While acting and singing made up her act, Maxwell seemed to understand and prioritise the importance of her looks. She took the upkeep of her dyed tresses in particular very seriously. So seriously that she even rejected roles that requested she dye her hair. Falling seriously ill in the prime of her career served as another point of realisation for Maxwell. Although the details are scarce, she reportedly decided to take her health seriously once she recovered. She then became a proponent of physical and mental health throughout her career. Just in time, as she became a part of an iconic moment in entertainment. In 1951, Maxwell starred in The Lemon Drop Kid. Her current fling, Bob Hope, played her leading man. The movie itself did well, but most importantly, it debuted what eventually became a Christmas classic.
Silver bells, silver bells.
Maxwell's affair with Hope went on for 3 more years after that, but once it was over, she moved on fast. Cupid struck again in 1954 when Maxwell married a third time, this time to writer and producer Jerry Davis. And though luck didn't seem to be on her side, their union seemed to be a good one, in the beginning. Maxwell honeymooned with her new husband in Mexico before settling down into her new life in Hollywood with him. She seemed in this one for the long haul, and gave birth to their son, Matthew, just 2 years later. Being a mother and wife didn't slow her down though. She continued to appear in films like New York Confidential in 1955 and Rockabye Baby in 1958. She often played the role of the sensual co-star getting in the way of the actual starring man. Furthermore, she cemented her place as a symbol of all things gorgeous and voluptuous in the 40s and 50s. Maxwell's roles never really earned her the fame of other Hollywood icons like Marilyn Monroe, or even her super famous Hollywood boy toys. We'd probably call her more of a B-list or even C-list celebrity in today's times. Perhaps that explains her questionable side gigs. While it seems her singing talent wasn't overly impressive, Maxwell took up singing roles to fill in the gaps in her acting work. She sang twice on the Jimmy Durante show in the mid-1950s, and when she couldn't sing on screen, she did the rounds singing at New York nightclubs. But tragically, she ultimately found out all that glitters is not, in fact, gold. While Maxwell managed to maintain her third marriage longer than her first two, it drew to an end just like the others. She and Davis divorced in 1960, 6 years into their marriage. There's no information on the reason why, but judging from her past, it's not hard to imagine some foul play. In 1961, Maxwell landed a role in a television show that promised to be one of her most memorable roles yet. Bus Stop centred on the diner at a bus station, where interesting visitors stopped through every episode. Maxwell secured a starring role as the owner of the place, but this wasn't the escape she hoped for. The show started as a moderate success, but started to shift as production ran out of guests to stop in at the bus stop. Eventually, the storyline focused more on the people of the small town nearby. After just 13 episodes, Maxwell called it quits. She may not have had the career she wanted, but she felt she was better than this. Around this time, Maxwell started frequenting places with actor Rock Hudson, already a certified superstar and Academy Award nominee. As expected, gossip magazines slated him as another one of her many beaux, and she never denied their relationship. But everything wasn't as it seemed. It didn't come to light until long after their romantic liaison, but Maxwell and Hudson were lying through their teeth. They'd made up the whole thing. In fact, Hudson's publicist requested that the two fake date in order to cover up Hudson's actual romantic preference for other men. But for all this somewhat noble pursuit, Maxwell didn't seem to get much out of it in the end. She continued to act, appearing in films such as Critics' Choice in 1963 and Stage to Thunder Rock in 1964. But behind the scenes, life looked glum. Perhaps she finally gave up on her pursuit of lasting love after 3 failed marriages, or perhaps she truly realised she'd never be a megastar. Either way, she felt it was all too much, and she began destructive habits. Reportedly, Maxwell found her reprieve by drinking heavily. As the 60s wore on, her vice started to take a toll on her, affecting both her acting ability and the good looks that helped carry her through her career. And then came her rock bottom. In 1967, people began finding out Maxwell's secret. They spotted her in the very last place they likely expected to see her, working as a risque dancer in Queens, New York. This represented the farthest fall for her, from a prime position in Hollywood society to a likely thankless position in a darkened club. To make her situation worse, Maxwell struggled with her health again during this time. Doctors diagnosed her with both lung disease and hypertension. Still, she kept on performing in order to provide for herself and her son. By now, we know that Maxwell's second marriage ended in the midst of an affair with Bob Hope, but the ending of her first union to actor John Conte was scandalously similar. In fact, it was worse. Maxwell crossed paths with Frank Sinatra several times early in her career. Just a year into her marriage with Conte, Maxwell found herself in closer proximity to Sinatra, though he too was also married to his wife Nancy at the time. Maxwell moved to Hollywood to continue acting, while Sinatra moved to Beverly Hills thanks to his growing music career. Eventually, the two began an affair, managing to keep it mostly concealed. That is, until they slipped up. It all started with a diamond bracelet. Sometime into the affair, Sinatra's wife Nancy found a diamond bracelet in his car. Although she knew her husband to be quite the flirt, she assumed he'd hidden the bracelet to give to her that Christmas. But when Maxwell stepped into the Sinatra Christmas gala that year, Nancy discovered the horrifying truth. As soon as Nancy spotted the bracelet on Maxwell's wrist, it all clicked into place. She promptly kicked both Maxwell and John Conte out of the party and then confronted Sinatra. Sinatra insisted to his wife that his relationship with Maxwell was only casual, so even though they were having an affair, it was nothing to worry about. And why would he lie? In March 1972, Maxwell's teenage son arrived home to a horrifying sight. He found his mother's lifeless body. By the time authorities arrived, she'd been long gone due to a heart attack at the age of 50. Maxwell's honorary pallbearers included both entertainment star Bing Crosby and comedy legend Jack Benny, as well as Bob Hope, and, awkwardly, Frank Sinatra. While her career never climbed the heights she seemed to desire, she did manage to make lifelong friendships along the way. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe for more videos.